At least 6 soldiers killed in a militant attack in Borno State in Nigeria. The medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières welcomes the World Health Organization declaration on Ebola. And the National Reconciliation Commission formed to oversee future talks between Somalia and Somaliland. Hello everyone, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall in Nairobi. We'll bring you the details on those stories in just a moment, but first, Uche Okoronko with the day's business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Beatrice. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. The World Bank applauds Egypt's economic reforms. And Tanzania's 2018 GDP is significantly less than what the government had estimated. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it's back to you, Beatrice.
Uche, thank you. And let's begin in Nigeria, where at least 6 soldiers have been killed in an attack, in a militant attack in Borno State. Authorities are blaming the attack on fighters affiliated to the Islamic State in West Africa province. According to military sources, militants opened fire on a patrol vehicle at a place called Jakana, 30 kilometers from Borno State capital Maiduguri. More militants later staged another raid on a military base a few kilometers from the scene of the first incident. However, the army repelled one in a gun battle that lasted for about an hour. Nigeria has been battling jihadist elements from Boko Haram and the breakaway faction of ISWAP. Well, let's cross over to Phil Ihaza. He's live for us in Abuja. He's joining me with more on the latest on that incident. Phil, what is the latest on that attack?
Well, for now, we know that the military has not responded to that attack, but a couple of sources, have reported that at least 6 soldiers were killed in an attack in Yobe State, that's in northeast Nigeria, involving, in fact, some of the reports are claiming that up to 20 lost their lives, but they were ambushed, the military soldiers were ambushed by insurgents as they were moving from the headquarters of the 29 Battalion Force to a forward operating base. They were ambushed by the insurgents. There was heavy, fierce shooting. A couple of insurgents were killed, but at least 6 soldiers, including 2 senior officers, a colonel and a captain, were killed in that attack at 6 p.m. local time on Wednesday. We're still waiting for the military to confirm, that attack and, of course, the casualties. I'm sure that's why we haven't also gotten the names of the personnel, which will be unethical to do so until we hear officially from the military.
And I feel, of course, there are those who will be asking why the repeated attacks on military bases and markets in villages in Maiduguri. How is the government, though, responding to it?
Well, we've seen, like you said, repeated attacks, especially from July last year by the insurgents, especially on military formations and, soft targets like the markets, crowded areas, but we know that there's also been some calls and concerns from past leaders, prominent Nigerians, on the government to, refocus or pay more attention on, tackling the insecurity challenges in the country, which includes insurgency. We also know that recently there was a meeting, just yesterday, there was a meeting by the leadership of the Senate, that's the upper chambers of the legislative arm of government, with Mr. President, President Muhammadu Buhari, especially on an all-inclusive national security summit, which is built to happen anytime from now. The date is yet to be confirmed, and that summit is supposed to tackle these key issues. Security analysts have called for a change of approach in fighting this war against insurgency. Hopefully that will be factored in. There's also been some form of reshuffling or reappointment of senior officers of the Operation Lafia Dole which means peace. Peace by all means. It was set up in 2015 to ensure that the remnants of Boko Haram insurgents were wiped out and peace was maintained in the northeastern part of the country. So we've seen officers, especially in the Air Force, reshuffled to ensure that the fight against insurgency is more effective and more results are gotten in the northeastern part of the country. So let's hope that these responses so far from the government will tackle the issue.
All right, Phil Ihaza joining us there from Abuja, Nigeria. Thank you. Now to Egypt, where at least 2 people have been killed in a suicide bomb attack in the restive Sinai Peninsula. The bombers, which were targeting security forces in the city of Sheikh Zayed. 1 member of the security forces was killed, 3 others were wounded, while a civilian also died in the explosion. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for that attack via its Amaq agency. North Sinai has long been a hotspot of extremist insurgents, mainly the local affiliates of ISIL. Last year, Egypt launched a massive offensive, mainly with the aim of wiping out the militants in the turbulent region. Well, CGTN's Adel Mahrouri is in Cairo for us. He's been following up on that story. Adel, what is the latest, though, following the suicide bomb attack?
There is still a chase going on and a security combing the area as the lookout for further attacks expected. Friday is one of the days that is usually have been seeing attacks against security troops, and this comes on a Thursday. So there is some precautionary measures taken by the security forces there to make sure that the area is quite secured. The attack happened near a market in Sheikh Zayed near a parking lot there, and according to statements from the Egyptian military, a suicide bomber was approaching a checkpoint near the market, and the police tried to stop him from a distance, and while shooting, the suicide vest has exploded, killing the perpetrator. One military officer has been confirmed dead, and injuries of others as well. It is an attempt to revive, according to many analysts, to revive the sense of ISIL's presence that has been in recent weeks trying to prove that it is capable of conducting attacks.
Well, Adel, we do not know for sure exactly who is responsible for this, but has anyone claimed responsibility as yet?
As you said, no one has claimed official responsibility yet. However, Amaq, which is an online magazine or news agency, if you may call it, it belongs to ISIL militants, and it usually reports details of stories of ISIL activities, of militants, how they live, etc. It's sort of a kind of a blog that the group that reports about the group itself, and from the way it's written, it is of course an insider information, which always gives Amaq a first look whenever there is an attack anywhere. People will go look at Amaq and see what are the information being there. But beside that, the official or the usual claim of responsibility we've used to see by the Sinai province, a group in North Sinai which has claimed has been affiliated to ISIL or swore allegiance, did not happen, and therefore it is still not clear exactly if it was truly ISIL or a de facto ISIL militant. But in general, the attack itself is not as effective as ISIL would like to appear, and usually in such small attacks where the casualties are quite minimum to what ISIL used to have, the group refrains from giving a clear statement of responsibility.
Adel Mahrouri joining us there from Cairo. Now, the international charity Médecins Sans Frontières has joined the Democratic Republic of Congo's government in welcoming the decision by the World Health Organization to declare Ebola outbreak in the Great Lakes region a public health emergency of international concern. As Wilkista Nyabwa reports, the organization says there is need for a change in approach in combating the spread of the disease.
In a statement released hours after the WHO's declaration, Médecins Sans Frontières said as one of the organizations that have been on the ground, it has seen firsthand the effects of the spread of Ebola in eastern DRC. In this regard, the organization also calling for a change of approach in the fight against the spread of the disease. while calling for mass vaccination of the population in the region. The calls come hours after the Congolese government welcomed the WHO's announcement. Earlier on, World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros declared the Ebola situation in DRC as a public health emergency of international concern.
As a result of this concern for potential further spread, the committee recommended that I declare the outbreak a public health emergency of international concern, FIC, and I have accepted that advice. Our risk assessment remains that the risk of spread in DRC and the region remains very high, and the risk of spread outside the region remains low.
At the same time, he also cautioned against a lockdown of the region, saying such a move would affect the livelihoods of the people, hence affect the DRC economically.
I emphasize that WHO does not recommend any restrictions on travel or trade, which rather than stopping Ebola can actually hamper the fight. Closing borders could have disastrous consequences for the lives and livelihoods of the people who cross the border every day for trade, education, or to visit relatives.
It is hoped that this announcement will generate massive response from the international community in curbing the spread of the disease. Militias operating in eastern Congo, together with mistrust from the local communities, have hampered intervention by health teams drawn from various organizations. Ebola has killed over 1,600 people since it was declared almost a year ago. The recent case reported in DRC's Goma has created panic of massive infections in the densely populated city and the neighboring Rwanda. Wilkisanyabo, CGTN.
While many DRC citizens are expressing disappointment at the World Health Organization's declaration on the Ebola outbreak, it is feared the decision could harm the country's fragile economy if trade and travel restrictions are imposed. CGTN's Chris Ochamringa reports from Kinshasa.
Declaring Ebola in the DRC an emergency of international concern is designed to draw attention and resources to stop the disease's spread. Health experts made the decision after a case was confirmed in the eastern DRC city of Goma, close to the border with Rwanda. But in Kinshasa, the concern is it may lead to neighboring countries closing their borders.
It's well known that Ituri, North and South Kivu provinces all rely on products from neighboring countries like Uganda, Rwanda and Tanzania. If those countries close their borders with the DRC, it will have grave repercussions, not just to our economy, but also the Congolese people.
And that prospect is worrying DRC citizens too.
Countries bordering the DRC should not close their borders to DRC citizens, because if they do so, it will have a very negative impact on our economy.
Many of our people survive on trading with neighboring countries. If those countries close their borders, it will be a disaster.
The Congolese Health Ministry has issued a statement saying it accepts the WHO's declaration. Last month, the WHO decided against declaring such a move after a case was reported in Uganda. That decision attracted criticism from some humanitarian agencies. The World Health Organization has urged countries to keep transport routes and borders open, but increase surveillance at all their points of entry. The global health body has also appealed for more funds to roll back the outbreak. Close to 1,700 people have died of Ebola since the onset of the outbreak last August. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
After almost a year since Ebola was detected in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the World Health Organization on Wednesday declared the virus a public health emergency of international concern. This is the highest level of alarm that the World Health Organization can sound, and it's only the fifth time that it has been declared in the history of the organization. Here's CGTN's Robert Nagila.
1,600 dead, more than 2,500 infected. The current Ebola outbreak is the second largest in history, following the 2014 outbreak in West Africa.
They need the support of the international community.
It's taken almost a year for the number of cases to reach 1,000, but just 71 days to reach 2,000 cases. An indication of just how rapidly the virus is spreading in the DR Congo. Now, the World Health Organization says Ebola is a public health emergency of international concern after a new case was recorded in the city of Goma in eastern DRC, home to more than 2 million people. This now means more resources to fight Ebola, but neighboring countries' borders will remain open. The WHO says risk of the disease spreading outside the region is low and has declined to issue travel or trade restrictions. Outside the immediate region, there will be no entry screening of passengers at ports or airports.
Now is the time for the international community to stand in solidarity with the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, not to impose punitive and counterproductive restrictions that will only serve to isolate them.
Since January, there have been close to 200 attacks against health workers or Ebola treatment facilities. At least 7 people have died and close to 60 injured. As a result, mistrust of health workers has also been a major factor, with many people refusing to seek medical treatment. A significant number of cases have also surprised health workers, as those affected have not come into contact with non-Ebola cases. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization says a fishmonger who died this week could have crossed into Rwanda. The woman is also said to have visited Rwanda. This comes as health workers struggle to track down the people she could have interacted with. Rwanda has already warned its citizens against unnecessary travels to the neighboring DRC, especially Goma City. On to Somalia now, where a new National Reconciliation Commission is to oversee all future talks between Somalia and Somaliland. The move comes amid increased political tension between the two, with Somaliland insisting that it remains an independent country. From Mogadishu, here's CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo.
The 6-member commission is the first to be formed since the election of Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo as president in 2017. The team is now tasked with establishing a roadmap that spells out future engagements between the federal government and Somaliland, including the agenda and location for all future talks. For close to 3 decades now, the breakaway region in northern Somalia has been seeking international recognition, while Mogadishu insists that the territory remains part of Somalia. In the streets of the capital, opinion remains divided, but majority have welcomed the talks.
It's time both sides came to the table and agreed on power sharing. As a country, we have undergone many challenges over the years, and it's time we all came together as a nation.
The Commission lacks proper representation. The President has named individuals from the north but has failed to include all regions. This will be a major setback for the upcoming talks.
Earlier this month, Mogadishu cut diplomatic ties with Guinea after the West African nation accorded Musa Bihi Abdi, the Somaliland leader, a state visit. The country's foreign minister warns that external interference risks undermining national unity and the reconciliation progress in Somalia.
It's up to Somalis to decide the fate of their own country. Foreign interference is a major obstacle to the talks between the federal government of Somalia and the Somaliland administration. Somaliland is not an independent country, and there is no country in the world that has recognized it.
Talks between the federal government and the breakaway region have failed to yield tangible results in the past. In 2016, both sides announced that talks had collapsed over disagreements regarding the venue for the talks, agenda and participants. Experts, however, say that the latest attempt might be successful as both sides have newly elected leaders in office.
The formation of this Reconciliation Commission comes at a crucial time, especially recently after Somalia suspended ties with Guinea over Somaliland. There are bound to be setbacks, but this is a step in the right direction.
Somaliland is yet to comment on the latest move, but analysts say that a new round of talks will help end decades of mistrust, quell the rising political tension, and bring both sides to a common ground. Abdul Aziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the program. Nigeria's Amaju Pinnick dismissed as CAF's first vice president. And IGAD working with Sudanese stakeholders to form a new government.
We journey across the dunes and the sweltering sands of the Sahara to bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope from one of the harshest environments on the planet.
هذا العام كيف نقولوا عام الأول جفاف.
Join us as we explore how climate change is affecting Africa's largest desert.
Football governing body FIFA has denied interfering with the Confederation of African Football's decisions following the dismissal of Amaju Pinnick as CAF's first vice president. Nigeria's Football Federation president was sacked after CAF's General Assembly meeting that was held in Egypt. Pinnick is the second West African football president to be sacked following last year's sacking of former Ghana's FA president Kwesi Nyantakyi. Pinnick has been appointed to replace Nyantakyi as the first vice president after Nyantakyi was embroiled in a corruption scandal. Pinnick will be replaced by Congo's Constant Omari, with Danny Jordan of South Africa appointed as the second vice president. There has also been changes to the CAF Champions League and the CAF Confederations Cup finals, where as from next season, the finals will be a one-off as opposed to the two-legged format.
And we've been working together in the last 3 years, and we have turned around altogether FIFA with Fatma. So what more can we do at FIFA than sending our top administrator with a team of experts to Africa to help? What more can we do? Tell me. I've been hearing about colonialization, that FIFA is colonializing Africa again, this bad FIFA. When Fatma Samoura was appointed Secretary General of FIFA, I didn't hear the opposite. I didn't hear that Africa is colonializing FIFA. What does it mean, colonialization? I don't know. It's not part of my vocabulary.
I myself had a very African upbringing, as I was raised by my grandparents. When I have problems at home, I have to call my parents. Who do I contact if I have a big problem? Unless otherwise, we've changed our view that FIFA is not the governing body of soccer. For me, it's the governing body. That's how I interpret it. I had to call on FIFA, and I have to thank sincerely from the bottom of my heart President Gianni Infantino. When I came to see him, he did not turn his back on me.
Well, let's cross over to Phil Ihazar again. He's joining me from Abuja for more on the CAF decisions. Phil, how has Nigeria and West Africa, though, taken the news of the dismissal of Amaju Pinnick?
Well, I'll say there's been a lot of reactions, majorly surprises, mostly on social media, on talking to football pundits and all of that. I would say that because just last night, I mean, the country has been, celebrating the victory of the Nigerian Super Eagles, coming out of the AFCON with bronze medal, their 8th bronze medal in all appearances at the AFCON so far, and then to see this development. So it's been quite a lot of surprises, but although a few football pundits are not surprised, they say it's high time that the CAF administration is reshuffled or cleaned up to see, so they're not surprised actually to see this kind of development, just a few of them that I've spoken to, but majorly it's been a lot of reactions on social media as to the news to why Amaju Pinnick is removed as the first vice president of CAF.
So just to get your view on this, Phil, do you believe that the wrangles over the last 1 year at the NFF may have somehow had an impact in this dismissal?
Well, it might be right to say so, but not definitely, because we're still waiting for more details of this development, because there's an ongoing General Assembly meeting of CAF happening in Egypt as we speak. We'll definitely get more details, but you can actually look back and know that yes, that in the past 1 year it has been quite some form of tussle there in the leadership of the NFF in Nigeria, talking about the leadership tussle, the allegations of bribery and misappropriation of funds towards Amaju Pinnick, but he's still the NFF president and he's still an executive member of CAF. So saying that that the 1 year issues and the NFF has affected it, you might be right and wrong on the other side, because Amaju Pinnick has released a statement saying that he was not nominated, the CAF executive, during the executive committee meeting earlier, that he was not nominated for another tenure, and it's more like his tenure has expired, and that's why more people are brought into that position, the first, second and third, from DR Congo, from Morocco and South Africa, as the case may be. So for now, what we can say is that, but I will not take out the fact that yes, those issues in the past 1 year, which the NFF president has also occupied as the first vice president, may have affected this decision or development as we've seen.
So Phil, very briefly though, there have been changes to the CAF Champions League and the CAF Confederations Cup finals. Do you believe it has to do with how this year's Champions League final ended with a lot of controversies?
Well, I'll say definitely, but looking at it, that these changes might have happened, but the development at the Champions League, the CAF Champions League, was seen as the last straw that broke the camel's back and brought these changes quicker than expected. It was quite an embarrassing moment, and of course also forcing the hand of FIFA to step in to oversee the administration of CAF here in Africa. Of course, that's the reason they appointed the Secretary General Fatma Samora to also help with that. So definitely that development or that issue would have forced these changes, would have forced FIFA coming into Africa to see how that they can bring the game to a more reputable and acceptable state that it should be. If you remember at the meeting, FIFA president said that they need to regain the trust of the people. So that's definitely what we're seeing, cleaning up the administration, trying to see that the people see CAF in a different light, a better light, as the case may be.
Phil Ihaza joining us there from Abuja. Thank you. The Ethiopian security forces, including the army, have prevented the attempt made by southern Ethiopian activists known as Sidama and opposition groups to form a self-proclaimed regional government within the Federation of Ethiopia. Tensions, however, remain high in the city of Hawassa as day-to-day activities remain on a standstill. CGTN's Gerum Chala has more.
Heavy army presence alongside the federal and regional police forces are reported in the southern Ethiopia city of Hawassa. Usual activities of people have been paused the whole day. Eyewitnesses said they have seen roadblocks and heard a few rounds of gunshots in the city. This is all after the activists of Sidama, which is inside the southern Ethiopia regional state, threatened to declare a self-proclaimed regional state within the federal government of the country. The government disallowed any such attempt and promised a military intervention to stop the move. And on Wednesday, the security forces have done just the same. The Ethiopian Electoral Board had released a statement a few days back saying it needs at least 5 months to stage a referendum for the people of Sidama to decide whether they want a regional administration out of the southern Ethiopia regional state or not. Tensions remain high within the Hawassa city itself, where the activists promised to declare the new regional state without the will of the central government. However, things are expected to calm down as Sidama elderly and political party leaders are calling on people to be patient and wait for the constitutional procedure to be followed. Ethiopia's government faced 10 similar other requests of forming new regional administrations within the federal government itself. Group Jara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, Girum Chala is joining us again because the International Authority on Development's envoy to South Sudan, Ambassador Ismail Wey, says that the organization is working with the South Sudanese stakeholders, including the government, to form the transitional government within the coming 5 months' time. Here's more.
All eyes are on South Sudanese parties at the moment. IGAD says, based on the much anticipated peace deal, both President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar are expected to form a transitional government in less than 5 months' time.
IGAD has extended the pre-transitional period for 6 months. We are remaining now with almost 5 months. Now, after the 5 months, we are trying to form that government. After forming the government, we are also working very hard to have, at the end of that transitional period, an organized, fair, and free election in the country, where the winners, in fact, should form the government in the Republic of South Sudan.
The special envoy Ismail Weiss believes there is now a relative peaceful environment in South Sudan more than any other time to fully implement the December 2017 cessation of hostilities deal.
Since December last year, in all over the country, except in the Yei River state, guns are now silent. We had that cessation of hostilities signed in December 2017. Since then, almost all the parties, except one, which is called NAS, led by General Thomas Cirillo, are respecting the cessation of hostility agreement. That means now, even since last year, last year, 18, there is a relative peace in the country.
Still, a significant amount of time is needed for South Sudan to fully come out of woods. Even there is a huge funding difficulty for the peace deal to be implemented. The good news here is the renewed pledge of IGAD member states, especially Ethiopia, Uganda, and Kenya, to support the cantonment process ongoing across South Sudan. Group Jara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, let's now go to Uche Okoronkwo for the latest business news. Uche.
Thanks, Beatrice. And coming up on Africa Live Biz, the World Bank applauds Egypt's economic reforms. And Tanzania's 2018 GDP is significantly less than what the government had estimated.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor, to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in Egypt. The World Bank has praised the economic reforms being implemented in the country. Those comments, of course, pave the way for a new billion-dollar facility from the institution to the North African nation. Well, CGTN's Yasser Hakim looks at the details of that World Bank report.
The outlook from the World Bank towards Egypt reforms has been positive.
numbers show a stronger Egyptian pound, economic growth rates hitting 5.5%, up from 3% in 2016, and higher inflows of foreign currency from sectors like tourism and expats remittances. The World Bank says new legislation and regulations to be applied this year would build investor confidence. That's a sign of support, noting that foreign investments had dropped by 2% year on year.
The latest amendments to the investment law are excellent. The law has adopted a mechanism for investors to exit the market and has included new clauses for bankruptcy. This is important to attract businesses back into the country. Another thing is that the new law has eased money transfer, which was not allowed recently. These are changes that will surely rebuild investor confidence.
The World Bank also expects a rise in non-petroleum exports, which have seen a 3.1% slump in 2018-2019 fiscal year. The way Egypt had handled the energy subsidy cuts was commended by the financial institution, especially that inflation rates have dropped to 9.1% from 35% in 2016-2017, in spite of the subsidies. However, there are challenges ahead.
The World Bank cited several issues that still need to be addressed, such as high inflation rates. There are also other sectors that haven't been developed, mainly health and education. The bank also said that another challenge is to reduce budget deficit even further. These are some of the main challenges that lie ahead.
The report by the World Bank has also been followed by a positive report by the IMF, which has said that it is planning to release the last batch of the $12 billion loan to Egypt in July. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Meanwhile, Tanzania's economic growth for the year 2018 appears to have been a lot lower than the government had estimated. Now, according to a World Bank report, the economy expanded 5.2% last year, and that's compared to the government's estimate of 7.1%. The International Fund says investment growth was subdued, partly due to government's struggles to meet spending targets in their development projects. Now, President John Magufuli has embarked on an ambitious program of industrialization following his ascension to power. However, government interventions in mining and agriculture have led to declining investments. The World Bank has recommended minimization of economic risks by improving the business environment as well as fiscal management. And further south, Standard Bank has acquired an additional 4.3 million shares worth about $4.1 million in Stanbic Holdings. Now, this has raised its stake in the local subsidiary to about 69.1%. The acquisition of shares rallied Stanbic's share price above $1 in 2019. Last year, Standard Bank announced it was purchasing about 59 million shares, valuing the offer at $54.4 million. However, it only received about 31.6 million shares valued at $29.1 million, raising its stake to 68.01% from the previous 60%. The conglomerate aims to raise its stake in the Nairobi Securities Exchange listed firm in order to reach its 75% ownership target. Now, nuclear talks seem to be back on the cards in South Africa. Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe says the country must restart plans for new nuclear power capacity in order to come online after 2045. Now, that's when other power solutions reach the end of their lifespan in the country. Well, CGTN's Sumitra Naidu tells us more.
South Africa already has a nuclear plant in the Western Cape. Vigorous debate, though, over the environment and affordability has limited any scope for new plants. However, government says it's looking at creating more nuclear capacity as a long-term solution.
This is really good news for the industry. South Africa is one of the founding members of the International Atomic Energy Agency. And so we are a nuclear country already. We have a nuclear power plant that is running at Koeberg. Our plans all along have been that we would increase the number of nuclear power plants. The 2010 to 2030 IRP had made provision for almost 10 gigawatts of nuclear.
But it's an expensive exercise. On average, the cost of building a nuclear plant is in the region of $50 billion.
A power generation project, whether it's renewable, is coal or nuclear, is not meant to be funded by the taxpayer. It is paid for through project finance, which is repaid over the period. Typically, funders would want their payback within 20 years, 20 to 25 years. And fortunately, nuclear power plants last more than 60 years.
The Integrated Resource Plan is South Africa's energy framework. It's being sent back to Parliament with changes for nuclear. The plan previously targeted building supply from natural gas, wind and other energy sources. Activists are unclear why nuclear is being added to the mix.
It is not something that we should be looking to invest in, just in terms of the safety issues and potential damage to the environment, but also to people. But beyond that, in terms of the economics, nuclear simply doesn't make sense. It's incredibly expensive, takes a really long time to build, and usually delivers over budget and over time. Nuclear is a terrible decision.
It's a valid point considering that government has spent billions on building new power plants, but those are all coal-fired and are adding to an already growing environmental program. Many believe that it's time South Africa does move away from fossil fuels. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And moving on now, the third edition of the Diaspora Forum has concluded in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Its main objective was to improve investment and growth projects in the West African nation. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with more.
This year's theme was Talents and Investment, the meeting point of employment and opportunity. The forum brought together researchers, bankers, entrepreneurs and businessmen, all with a keen interest in promoting innovative projects.
Je suis en train de me lancer dans le domaine du consulting, le conseil.
I am in the process of getting into the consulting business. Consulting because through some publications that I made in the field of development, I felt that I have some expertise in the field. As you know, ideas also build a nation. It is these ideas that we want to bring to see in what ways new ideas and innovations can really make a difference.
We have been able to create several structures, including REDIS, an Ivorian network of importing distributors and industrial mining companies in Côte d'Ivoire and some African countries, which helps young people and women to find funding to start and achieve their projects.
The diaspora is an essential link in the development of Côte d'Ivoire. To further establish this link, the government signed a convention with the African Solidarity Fund to support diaspora investors and facilitate their installation in the business community.
We have not only taken over the immigration file, but we have also integrated it into the general issue of Côte d'Ivoire being there for its citizens wherever they are. We therefore analyze the phenomenon, both as a challenge and as a window of opportunity, open to new avenues for international cooperation. This has a notion that our expatriate community, with its diversity of skills, is a force that only needs to be put at the service of our country's development.
According to the African Development Bank, Côte d'Ivoire's diaspora generates nearly $308 million in terms of revenue. The forum also noted a need to inform the diaspora of existing business and investment opportunities, as well as the facilitation of administrative procedures for installation. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Now, on the international front, France is hosting a two-day meeting of finance ministers of G7 governments in Paris. Now, the ministers hope to find an international solution for taxing the world's tech giants. France has said it will push ahead with a tax measure that has, of course, sparked a row with the United States. Well, CGTN's Stéphane de Vries has more from the French capital.
Well, they have to find some answers to some very pressing questions about the global economy. First of all, we already mentioned it, the global trade wars between the USA, the European Union and China, which could be a threat to the global economy. But there is also a lot of talk about the digital companies, the tech giants, who basically threaten the sovereignty of many nations, as it is seen by the G7 finance ministers here in Paris, where they are meeting. So they will have to find a common ground on, for instance, how to tax global tech companies, because many of them are pretty creative in using legal constructions to avoid paying taxes in the countries where they earn the most money. Most countries, most G7 countries, they agree on a way of introducing a new levy on these tech companies, but they do not agree on the way how to introduce a new digital tax.
Now, what exactly is this digital tax all about, and which companies will be impacted? Here's Timothy Ulrich explaining.
France's parliament passed a tax on July 11th after years of work to reform the international tax system. It makes France one of the first countries to impose a special tax on digital giants. The tax looks to ensure that multinational companies are not able to escape paying taxes in countries where they do much of their business. Digital firms pay less tax partly because it's harder to determine where on the internet their revenue has truly been generated, especially if the firms can artificially shift profits to lower tax countries such as Ireland and Luxembourg. The tax amounts to a 3% annual levy on French revenues of digital companies with yearly global sales worth more than 750 million euros. It's also known as the GAFA tax, an acronym for Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. But France is saying it doesn't discriminate against U.S. companies, as it also targets those from other countries, including France itself. Timothy Ulrich, CGTN.
Now, it certainly seems like frontier technology is already moving to the next stage, of course, leaving artificial intelligence far behind. Well, Elon Musk's Neuralink is developing brain-machine interfaces to implant devices in paralyzed humans. And in this way, people can control phones or computers as they will. Here's CGTN's Jim Spellman with the story.
Elon Musk has developed electric cars with Tesla and sent rockets to space and back with SpaceX. But now he's taking on what may be the real final frontier.
We can do a full brain-machine interface,
combining man and machine with a new technology dubbed Neuralink, which would allow data to be transmitted between humans and computers. Here's how it works. An array of tiny threads, only a tenth as big as a human hair, embedded with thousands of electrodes, is inserted into the brain by a robotic device. The threads are connected to a chip that transmits back and forth to an external receiver.
The interface to the chip is wireless, so you have no wires poking out of your head. Very, very important. So it's basically Bluetooth to your phone.
Musk says Neuralink may help the human brain cure diseases and even reverse paralysis. Eventually, it could be used to connect with external devices.
With a high bandwidth brain-machine interface, I think we can actually go along for the ride. And we can effectively have the option of merging with AI. I think this is extremely important.
Neuralink claims the devices have been successfully implanted in rats and at least one monkey who is able to control a computer with its brain. The company hopes to implant the first Neuralink into a human patient by the end of the year. Analysts worry this technology could have unforeseen negative impacts.
We aren't aware yet that the technology has gone in reverse, meaning that you can use some sort of external force to implant thoughts or something else inside of the brain. There are, like with anything else, there are downsides. Think about a hacker getting into a brain interface. That's one. Think about government control of people's brains, controlling what they think. Things like that are obviously a concern.
From Star Wars to the Terminator, science fiction has long dreamt of merging humans with technology. But with rapidly evolving robots and artificial intelligence,
hello, everyone, I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor.
What was once fiction is quickly becoming fact.
As this technology evolves, the question may be, can we merge man and machine without losing some of our humanity? Jim Spellman, CGTN, Washington.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up on Global Business Africa, we'll be looking at Zimbabwe's strategy to turn around its economy. Of course, all that will come up top of the hour. Let's head into a short break now. Beatrice will be back later with more news.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
And we go straight to South Africa, where millions of people commemorated the Nelson Mandela's Day by distributing food to early childhood development centers in a drive to end starvation. CGTN's Julie Shire was at the Rise Against Hunger initiative and filed this report.
Packing for a purpose, every year South African organizations and volunteers come together to honor Nelson Mandela's legacy. In South Africa, close to 6 million children live below the poverty line and often go hungry.
It's very important. I mean, how many people out there sleep without food, without eating? So this is quite important to actually think of those that are less fortunate than ourselves and ensure that at least everyone gets something to eat before they go to bed.
These people have come together to do their 67 minutes for Mandela Day. Each person will pack enough to feed a child for an entire year.
Pack that we're packing, it's not much, but it can feed a family of 6 or about 10 kids. That's what the message is all about. You don't need much to give away. Anyone can give to other people that don't have it. You don't need much. You don't have to be rich or anything, but you can give.
For the last 4 years, 4 to 6 years, we've gone from packing 3 million meals to 6 million meals this year alone. The meals consist of a vitamin sachet, which contains your 23 vitamins and minerals for malnutrition, as well as dry vegetables, soya, and rice.
The food goes to children's centres around the country. One of the beneficiaries in Johannesburg is Kids Haven, caring for 46 children.
Rise Against Hunger, it really helps me a lot since I'm only depending on the school fees of the kids. So when they come to my center, they really rescued me because I managed to save some of the money that I was supposed to buy the rice and the soya for the children. Then I used the money to improve my center, to buy the resources for my center, even to be able to pay my teachers as well.
Proper nutrition is vital to mental and physical development, especially in children under 5. These meals do more than just fill up tummies. They also help prevent learning difficulties caused by malnutrition. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And your sports news coming up next. Here's what's ahead. Britain's Simon Yates takes stage 12 of the Tour de France, completing wins in all 3 Grand Tours.